Hi, I'm Justin from Poodle, and I'm going to be talking today about Generico Two. This was a presentation that I gave at the Moodle Moot Japan 2026 a few days ago, and I thought it would be good for people who couldn't attend the Moodle Moot in Japan to see Generico, to hear about Generico Two. So we've made this video for you. It's available on GitHub right now, but it will eventually be available on the Moodle plugins directory. It doesn't cost any money, so please use it when you have a chance. So why did I originally make Generico? It was back in 2014, and at that time to embed a an item into Moodle, like a YouTube video or a set of Quizlet flashcards, required a dedicated filter. So you would have a filter for YouTube or a filter for Quizlet or a filter for some other item. And it's a lot of overhead for something that was really quite a simple task. And I thought we just need a generic filter that can do that process for multiple kind of embeddable items. And that was the genesis of Generico. It's a filter plugin, so it takes like a string that is transformed into some other piece of content after it has been filtered. So we also have an HTML editor plugin, which allows you to craft those strings without having to manually make them by typing them in. To show that in another way, you click on the icon on the HTML toolbar, that's number 1 over here, and then you choose the widget that you want to use. In this case, we've chosen QR code, and that will insert a nice filter string. And then in the final step, when that page is displayed, that filter string will be turned into something, a set of tabs or a block of text, or in this case, a QR code. So let's go over to our test forum and try it out. I usually test with a forum activity because that allows us to create unique little items within the forum without having to clutter up our course page. So I've started us here with a QR code forum post, and that's the URL that we're going to embed in our QR code because we need some data to put into our QR code. So I'll just copy that for now. Let's make a reply on this post here, and we'll set it to advanced because we need to have the HTML editor available. This is the Generico HTML editor pop-up. So just click on that. And these are the widgets that we have already created, or that we have the templates that we have ready for us to use. So if I click on QR code, that will give us some information to fill in. If I click on another one, for example, the video lightbox, there's a different set of information to fill in. So each widget has its own kind of data that it can accept. In the case of the QR code, we're going to give it the URL of Poodle. We'll leave the size as it is, and we'll insert that on the page. And we can see it's a filter string, a little bit scary looking, but nothing to worry about. Once we post that to our forum and it's displayed, it's turned into a nice QR code, which would be picked up by a mobile phone where we just scan it. So that's great. So let's do one more. We're going to now make a YouTube lightbox. So taking this YouTube URL here, we're going to use our video embed tool widget from the Generico pop-up here. We choose video lightbox and put our YouTube video in there, press insert, and there's our nice filter string, post to forum, and we have a thumbnail, which when we click on is turned into a lightbox. Now this system is actually used in Moodle Academy. They're using it for some of their courses. We see a panel of videos. You can choose a video that you want to watch, and it'll show in a lightbox. So it's one of the the different uses that Generico has, but it's used all over the place. These are some of the widgets that it has been used with. We've got QR codes, tabs, dice, calculator, charts, image lightboxes. It uses music score. We have a template for the ABC notation, which transforms text into music. Great. So what can you make with Generico? Well, there are ready-made templates, audio players, lightboxes, tabs, accordions, and there are custom templates that you make yourself. Since I made Generico in 2014, similar filter plugins have come out, notably the filter codes plugin and the shortcodes plugin, and they do something similar. They take a filter, a string that you put on the page, and they turn that into something exciting. So Generico isn't the only one that can do that, but where Generico is really quite special is the ability to make custom templates. You can make widgets for your dashboard, things that show off your products, or reusable bits of text that you just insert the widget on a page, and later on you can, and they, for example, a header format, and later on you can change that header right across the site by just changing what's in the Generico template. But there's been a lot of innovation, a lot of people using it in quite amazing ways. So it's a great plugin, but I want to look at the custom templates feature because this is particularly where we wanted to make something new for Generico 2. Because Generico 2 is still very important for a lot of schools. They use it for their custom purposes. They've made custom widgets, and so we don't want to lose the functionality that we have, but it's become quite difficult to maintain because Moodle has changed so much since 2014. We've got a new JavaScript system. We've had several new JavaScript systems. We've gone from UE to AMD, ECMA6, and I think we're going to be going to React pretty soon. We've got a template system called Mustache, which is very powerful. And Generico has its own template system, but it's not as powerful as Mustache. And if we use the existing Moodle AMD template or AMD kind of format, and we use Mustache templates, we can actually reuse existing components that are already in Moodle inside our Generico templates. So there's a lot of benefit to be gained by upgrading to a modern system. So what's new in Generico 2? Well, first of all, for students and teachers, it's not going to look any different. It's the same templates and widgets are going to work, and the same widgets will work. The templates behind them might be a little bit different, but under the hood, it's a complete rewrite using modern APIs. The templates are Mustache, AMD. It'll support multiple tags, so not just Generico, but G2 and also Poodle. Eventually, the Poodle filter will be replaced by Generico 2. And there's a code editor for template authoring and a preview area for template authoring. So let's go and have a look at what that means. So this is the original Generico, and you can see this is how we would author a template. Okay, put the template key, the name, the version, instructions that would show in the HTML editor pop-up, the body of the template, the HTML that goes on the page, and any JavaScript that's going to go in there as well. There's more fields, but that's the basics of it. If we look at that same QR code template that has been brought over into Generico 2, those fields are pretty much the same. We have the version, we have the template key, the name, the instructions, but where we have the HTML that goes on the page, the content of the template, this is using a code editor here, so we can actually edit this in a kind of a nice way. We just increase the screen here a little bit, the size of the screen. So for example, if I type in a div tag here, go like that, I'll get the closing div tag. And if I were to mess up my spelling or something, I get a little indication here that there's a mistake on this line. So using a code editor is actually very helpful when you're trying to make a widget like this, where the widget is very short, it's just a few lines. Perhaps it's not such a big difference, but where you've got quite long ones, then it's actually very helpful. Scrolling down, and in the JavaScript area, we also have this feature where we can highlight the text and get syntax highlighting, so we can work with it a lot more easily. And if I make a mistake, for example, I make this mar, I'll get a visual indication that there's a mistake on that line, which is very helpful for me. So very good. The other feature that we have is this preview feature. We can preview the template without actually having to leave the page and go to a different location, or even without having to save it. We can just preview what we have edited to make sure it works before we save it. So we've got test string 1 here, so let's preview test string 1, and there is our QR code. Now, what we can do here is we can actually create 2 test strings. So you can test different patterns of your your template. So that's a different one, and just to kind of make that clear that's a different one, let's change the size of that to really big size, make it 12. Change it to test string 2, preview. Again, there's our big test string 2 QR code. Go back to test string 1, there's our small QR code. Okay, so you have now in the Generico 2 templates, we can use the highlighting, the editor for the code editor for the JavaScript and the HTML, which is very useful. And we can have nice interactive previews that allow us to develop a lot faster, to test a lot better. So great. Now, one more thing I'd like to show you that we can do. If I go back to our, so this is where I want to be. This is where we have the filter. So go down to Generico 2 filter, and we have this templates area here. This is where we can administrate our templates. So the other template that I want to demonstrate here is this user list template. Now, what's interesting about the user list template is that we have a data set, and the data set is created by some SQL that runs here. Select star from user where the user is not, where the user's ID is not the current user's ID. So this is actually just an example of how to create a data set using an SQL statement. But this uses the Moodle APIs to do this, so it's relatively secure. And this is how you pass in variables into this. You might put the course ID, you might put some other information in here, run your SQL, and the results of that SQL go into the data set. And we're using the mustache array looping feature so that the information in the data set here, which is an array, will loop through. Well, it will be used when this data set is looped through to display a different row for each user that is in the data set. So this is something that's new. We could do this before in JavaScript using mustache, but it was more complicated. But using the I'm sorry. We could use this before in JavaScript in the old Generico, but it was more complicated. But using the new Generico 2, with the mustache templating feature, we have the ability to loop through arrays of variables natively. So we can just simply pass a data set into the mustache template and loop through it in this way. Let's preview and see what happens. Okay, so there is our list of users. Okay, very good. Now, the other thing that we can do here, which I think is quite interesting, let me just pop this open here. Is we can hook into the helper system. So Mustache in Moodle has helpers, and one of those is to display icons from the Moodle standard icons. So beside each of our users, we can put a user icon. So let's go like that. Okay, great. So that's illustrating how we can use the helpers that are in the Moodle Mustache thing, even though that particular helper is perhaps not that exciting. But if we go back here, a more useful helper is this helper here, which allows us to access the Moodle string system. So we can get localized versions of the strings. So in this case, the strings are first name and last name, and we'll see those in English, but should our Moodle have a Japanese language or a different language, French or Italian, then the first name and last name for those languages would be displayed in place of the English ones. So let me do a little preview there. And we can see the title is first name and last name. I won't toggle my language to Japanese, but just believe me that works. So that's the basics of the changes that have been made. Now, one thing that people will ask is, what about my existing templates? Because it's quite important that people can migrate easily. What we'd like to happen is people just test using Generico 2, make sure that their templates are working correctly, turn off the old Generico filter, turn on the new Generico 2 filter, and all their existing filter strings all around the site remain intact and work just as they did previously. So in order to make that easier, we've created a migrate feature here. So you can migrate your existing templates. We'll have presets available. So in most cases, if you're just using the ready-made templates that Generico provided, then the presets should be available for you and you won't really need to make any changes at all. But if you have custom templates that you've already made, then we can pull those in using the migrate templates feature. So in this case, we've got the icon toggle. I click on icon toggle, migrate selected templates, and that has now disappeared from the list and been migrated and will be available over here. And if we were to go to the reply and advanced, pop open our Generico thing here, we will have somewhere in there toggle with icon. Okay, so that's the template that we just migrated, and hopefully that will work. Looks like it does. Okay, so that is Generico 2. If you're interested in using that, please get it from GitHub at the URL that you see there, github.com Justin Hunt Moodle filter Generico 2, or wait a few weeks and it should be available on the Moodle plugins directory.